guys, this is Smithy. Welcome to my channel. If you guys are new here, welcome. Today is yet another dupe video. I love finding dupes for you guys, and today we're going to talk about the newest Pat Mcgrath palette, the Mothership palette that's come in the industry, and this is called the Moonlit Seduction Palette. Now, when this palette was revealed on Insta, it felt like it's a very cool tone muted palette, but when you read more about this palette, it seems like it is leaning towards more of a warmer color story. Now, this palette looks completely different in all the different lightings that they have shown, because when you see it on the website, when they have those like videos showing up, it looks completely different and like vibrant. And Pat Mcgrath is actually known for like, you know, putting those filters on those palette to give it more like glimmer and shimmer and sparkly effect. So I exactly do not know. She also released some of the swatches, so I am going based on those swatches and going true to the color story, like the description of the colors that she's like laid out on. And I personally feel if you do have the Celestial Odyssey palette, you basically do have a lot of shades already with you. And if you do have the Bronze Seduction palette from Pat Mcgrath, that is it. Except like I think 2 shades, you have everything else with you. Also keep in mind when you're going with like Pat Mcgrath eyeshadows, you're paying for the packaging for sure. I'll show you the Bronze Seduction packaging. This is how generally her Mothership packaging looks like. And right now the packaging, I really love her packaging. Everything is like glitter and shimmery and all. Like this packaging is so beautiful. All her packagings are like super stunning, and the palette's quality also is exactly like this. Like it's a lacquer packaging but super heavy and like beveled mirror and like beautiful shades. So the packaging, you're gonna get 10 on 10. You're not gonna get disappointed. The whole matter lies, are you gonna pay for the packaging, or are you gonna dupe the shades if you already have those shades in the collection or not? So let's begin duping. Okay, before that, let's read a little bit about the palette. As I said, this palette is gonna retail at $128. So Mother says, this is the Mothership 10th Moonlit Seduction Palette. Prepare to dance the night away in decadent, dazzling, and discopulent array of nocturnal neutrals inspired by sensually starlit seductions under the mesmerizing moon. Each hedonistic hue inspires glamorous structure in 10 warmly wearable shades with unprecedented single stroke intensity. Is this English, Italian, Spanish? I don't know. Doesn't seem English to me. Okay. But yes, I love the way she describes all her palettes. But when I personally thought of the Mothership 10 palette, I thought that she is really going to give us like some jewel tones because it's her 10th anniversary. I really wanted some colors. This is definitely more on the wearable side, as Mother definitely goes with her like pinks and golds, and this palette also has her pinks and gold just like sprinkled here and there, but she does have a few sparkle shimmer here and there. So yeah, let's start duping this palette. I really did not feel like difficult to dupe this palette because as soon as I saw the palette, I was like, that's interesting, that's glamorous, I really like that. But when I deeply went into like single shades, I was like, let me see if I can dupe it or not, because that reminded me a lot of the holiday palette that Pat Mcgrath released for 2021, and that was the Celestial Odyssey palette. So if you guys do have this palette, let's start duping and you'll see. The first shade in the palette is called Skin Tense Glow, and this is a soft beige shimmer shade. And this is being duped by the Celestial Odyssey palette by this shade, which is called Galactic Glow. And let me swatch it for you guys. Again, this is like a champagne shimmer shade. Nothing groundbreaking, but you get the gist. Great for inner corners, great for brow bone. Oh, by the way, you can see 2 looks. I have actually used these dupe shades on my eyes to create like 2 different looks. So if you are planning on getting, which I, by the way, never tell you not to buy or to buy any palette. It's totally up to you. If the color story speaks out to you, if you do not have those shades in your collection, go ahead, buy. It's your money. But I generally do help out with the people who really like the palette but do not know whether they really have those shades in their collection or not. And I think my videos will definitely help them out with it. So I have created these 2 eye looks, which I'll show at the end of the video how I created these 2 looks using these dupe shades. But for now, this is the first shade, which is called Skin Tense Glow from the palette. Okay, now let's move on to the second shade. The second shade is called Extreme Nocturnal, and this is defined as a brown taupe matte shade. Now, as soon as I saw that shade, I really thought of this shade, but I feel like this is a little more on the warmer side, but I would say the Extreme Nocturnal shade from that palette is definitely more on the neutral side. This on the eyes looks super neutral, I would say, but in the pan, it definitely looks warmer. And this is the shade called Nocturne. I didn't even realize that. And this is the shade called Nocturne from the Celestial Odyssey palette. So let's swatch that. I would say if you do have the Dose of Colors Francation palette, the shade that's called Chains would be like very, very similar to it. See, when I swatch it, it looks much more neutral. And this is the shade that dupes the shade Extreme Nocturnal from the palette. Very, very beautiful shade, I would say. Very pretty. Okay, the next shade in the palette is called Rosewood Romantic, and this is defined as a rose sienna matte shade. I personally feel if you do have the Celestial Odyssey palette, you would need to mix two shades to get that shade, or else I'll give you another option. But if you have this palette and you don't mind mixing, then I would say if you mix this shade and this shade together, this pink matte shade and this like sienna shade together, you would get that rose sienna shade. But if you do have the Mercury Retrograde palette from Huda Beauty, the shade which is called Karma is an exact dupe to that. So I'm going to swatch that. This is the only shade that I'm using from this palette, by the way. So let me swatch that. See how beautiful that shade is. So it definitely is like a pinky brown shade, but it definitely has a hint of peach in it. And that's called Rosewood Romantic from the palette. Okay, now let's move on to the bronze shade, which Mother cannot stay away from. So this is called the Bronze Devotion shade. This is defined as a gleaming golden bronze shade, and this is being duped by the Bronze Seduction 5 palette. And again, we are duping it with this bronze shade, which is called Bronze Blaze, again from the Bronze Seduction palette. So I'm just going to swatch that. And her normal shimmer shades are not like groundbreaking or anything. So you're not like missing out on that for sure. There. And that is the shade, duping the shade Bronze Devotion. Again, a very bronzy, if you are like more of a neutral person, you'll definitely have that shade in your collection for sure. Okay, now let's move on to the fifth shade of the palette, and this is called Platinum Dusk, and this is defined as a sparkling metallic anthracite shade, and this is being duped by this shade from the Celestial Odyssey palette, and this is called Palladium. So let me swatch that for you. Again, it's a very anthracite platinum shade. Little more on the deeper side, I would say, but if I'm going according to the swatch, this is an exact dupe to that. Again, this is duping the shade Platinum Dusk from the Moonlit Seduction palette. The next shade in the palette is called Plum Cabaret, and this is defined as a neutral plum matte shade. And again, it's been duped by the Celestial Odyssey palette. Surprise, surprise. And this is the shade that I'm duping it with. And this is called Saturn Sunset. So let me swatch that for you. It's a very beautiful plummy shade. And again, this is duping the shade Plum Cabaret from the palette. Okay, now let's move on to the 4 last special shades of our palette, right? Which we all drool about. The next shade in the palette is called VR Sextasy, and this is defined as a vermilion with a blue shift. Now, as soon as I saw that shade, I knew I had this shade from Pretties for Your Face, and this is duped by the shade called Rock Biter from Pretties for Your Face. Now, this is the shade how it looks. It's a vermilion shade with like a blue shift. Can you see that deeper, like a maroon base? It's like a reddy brown base with like a blue shift. It's beautiful. So let me swatch that. Again, this is a very, can you see that? It's a very smooth shadow. Let me swatch that. Oh my God, stunning it is. I hope you see that shift. It's really difficult to capture it on the camera, but I'll like show you the close-up of all these swatches in the outside lighting too. But this is the shade that dupes the shade VR Ecstasy from the palette. Again, this is Rock Biter from Pretties for Your Face. Okay, the next two shade is duped by this Bronze Seduction palette. So I'm going to just keep this open. The next shade in the palette is called Blitz Venus. And this is defined as a sparkling rose quartz shade. And this is being duped by the shade, this one, which is called Rose Gold 005. Again, I feel like this shade is a tiny little bit deeper than the new shade from her palette. I think that is a little more on the subtle side. Very sparkly, very glamorous. This is the shade Rose Gold 005 that dupes the shade Blitz Venus from the Moonlit Seduction palette. I also would say if you do have the Celestial Odyssey palette, it does have a lighter rose gold shade, which is this one, and this is called Rose Venus from the Celestial Odyssey palette. But this won't be as shimmery glimmery as her Blitz Astral formula, so I wanted to compare it with the Bronze Seduction palette also. I have a bad cough going on right now, so I might sound a lot raspy. I'm on my antibiotics, but I definitely wanted to film this for you guys, so bear with me. The next shade in the palette is called Astral Gold Lust, and this is defined as a sparkling golden champagne shade, and this is being duped by this shade again from the Bronze Seduction palette. And this one is called Astral Lunar Gold. It looks white in the pan, but it is super, super gold. So let me swatch that. Can you see that? Oh my God. I don't know if you can see it or not. It's super gold and super reflective. Like super shiny, super lovely. I'm pretty sure if I like flash it, it'll show really, really well. Let me see if I can show you. Like I have a little light here. Can you see that? I'll show you in the outside lighting. That would be much, much better, I would say. Because I generally do film with the natural lighting. I think outside lighting would be so pretty just to see all the dimension and the shades. Now let's move on to the last shade of the palette. And this shade is called Astral Lilac Aura shade. And this is defined as a sparkling platinum lilac shade. And this is duped by the Celestial Odyssey palette. And with this lilac platinum shade, which is called Lunar Haze. So let me swatch that. Such a beautiful lilac shade. Love it. Like, look at that. Of course, in the Moonlit Seduction palette, this is going to be more like glimmery, shimmery. But the effect and the shade would be exactly the same. So that is the whole Moonlit Seduction palette duped for you guys. Now let me show you a close-up of all these swatches in the outside lighting so that you can see it in full effect. And now without further ado, let's move on to the two looks using this palette. Let's begin with the first look. So excited. Okay, the first shade that we're going to put is from the Huda Beauty palette, and it is this shade, which is Karma. I'm going to apply this here towards the inner third of the eye. Just trying to concentrate it here. And I'm going to take the same shadow on my lower lash line too. Now I'm going to dip into this shade, which is Nocturne from the palette. This is like a very intense, deep, dark brown. Concentrate that on the outer corners. And just blending it across. I'm applying very, very little pressure. I'm going to take the same shade on my lower lash line, only focusing on the outer corners. Now I'm going to dip back into that Karma shade that we initially used. I'm just going to blend the edges of that shade, the darker shade, just so that there's no harsh lines. Okay, now I'm going to take this lilac shade from the palette, and this is called Lunar Haze. And I'm going to apply that, mainly focusing on the center of the eyelid, and then just blending it across that deepening shade. So once we have placed that shade, and go into the same brush that we applied the darker shade with no extra product, but I'm just going to blend the edges. And then for the sparkly blitzy eyeshadow, we're going to take the Pat Mcgrath Bronze Seduction 5 palette, and I'm going to dip into this rose gold shade. I'm going to take a more of a precise brush because this would give us fallout for sure. I'm going to concentrate that on the inner third of the eyelid. Just melting it with that lilac shade too. I'm also going to take that in my inner corners. I'm just going to finish off my eyes with some liner and mascara and I'll get right back. And that's my first eye look. Now let's move on to the next eye look. For the next eye look, I'm going to take this plummy shade, and this one is called Saturn Sunset. So let's take that all across our crease, and this is more of that plummy shade, I would say. And these Pat Mcgrath shades are like super buildable. If you guys have experienced Pat Mcgrath shadows, you know that how blendable, how buildable these are. So even if there are like a very few shadows in the palette, you can definitely build it up to a deeper shade. I'm going to take the same shade on my lower lash line. I'm just applying my NYX glitter glue right on the center of my eyelid so that I have a tacky base. I'm doing this only because I've laid down the matte and I need something to stick onto it, because now we're going to go into that duochrome shade from that palette, and which has been duped by the shade Rock Biter from Pretties for Your Face. Look how beautiful that shade is. We only have 2 shades here and it pops like crazy. I love it. Okay, now for the inner corners, I'm going to take this shade from the Moonlit Seduction 5 palette, and this basically dupes the shade Astral Gold Lust. So I'm going to take that and I'm going to apply that in my inner corner. Look how poppy that shade is, man. It's crazy. I'm just going to apply that there. Stunning, stunning. Now for the final touch, I'm going to dip back into my Celestial Odyssey palette, and I'm going to take this champagne shade, and this is called Galactic Glow, the first shade in the palette. I'm going to take that underneath my brow bone, on both the brow bones actually. And this will help just lift the brow bone a tiny little bit. That shade, the duochrome shade, is so pretty, so smooth and so pretty. Now for the lower lash line, I'm going to take that deeper brown from the palette and I'm going to just dip that and just tight line on my lower lash line, just for a little smoky effect. And actually, just to show you guys the taupe silvery shade here, this one, I'm going to take that on the edges of this eyeshadow, just so that you see maximum amount of shades on my eyes. Just like that. Now let me finish off my eyes with some liner and mascara, and we'll be back with the final look. And this is my second eye look. I really hope that you guys enjoyed both the eye looks that I created using the dupe for the newest Pat Mcgrath Moonlit Seduction Palette. I really hope that this video was helpful for you guys. Let me know in the comment section below. Are you planning to pick up this palette on the launch date? I right now do not have a launch date in front of me. It just shows coming soon. But I wanted to put this video out for you guys so that you have enough time to think whether, if you do have these two palettes, especially from the Pat Mcgrath line, in your hands, do you really want it? Do you really need to run and grab it at like $128? I leave this video at that. And if you did like this video, do give it a thumbs up and also subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and ring that notification bell so that you're notified every time that I post next. I generally upload 3 videos every single week, every Tuesdays, Thursdays and Saturdays at 9 AM Eastern Standard Time. Until next time, I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye guys.